and as well on the Budget Committee and Homeland Security. I am here with two distinguished members. First, Chantel Brown of Ohio.
Agriculture, Select, and Oversight.
Who's on the Select Committee on Agriculture and on Oversight. Clearly committees that will see its share of the horrors of fentanyl. And of course, Mr. Jonathan Jackson of Chicago, Illinois, who is on the Agriculture Committee and Foreign Affairs. I am here, my colleagues are here to save lives. And we are excited about introducing, with over 30 original co-sponsors and growing, the Stop Fentanyl Now Act of 2023. We're here to make a difference. We're here to confront the horrors of parents who find their children dead because they took the little pink pill, or they went upstairs or to their room after a great evening dinner, got online, and they ordered online mail to an anonymous or different address, and their children overdose. This is happening around America and around the world. As illicit fentanyl floods our communities, fentanyl-related deaths continue to increase at a devastating rate, claiming nearly 200 lives each day in every corner of the country. This is not a time for a blame game. This is a time for action. Just for informational sake, our personnel at the border, CBP, has indicated that most fentanyl comes through legal ports of entry by American citizens. So we don't gain anything by making this an immigration fight. We have to make this the fight that it is. Dastardly cartels or dastardly organized groups or dastardly online purveyors of these pills that prey upon our children. Fentanyl is known to be 50 to 100 times stronger than heroin, typically mixed with other substances and counterfeit pills, which is the cause of a high number of deaths. We know that when law enforcement comes upon a case or first responders, they have to be very, very careful because even the touching of fentanyl may cause a devastating impact. I started out by saying, I'm here to save lives. It is for our children, it's for our families, and it's for our first responders who are the first to be called in that terrible moment that someone has OD'd. Those ODs are seen in our schools. So the lock 'em up theory is not going to be the only answer or the answer. Of the 1,205 unintentional fentanyl-related deaths in 2022, only 18.8% involved no other drug. And that means if you get together with your teenage friends and they bring to you the pink pills that they ordered, and you're going to have just a little celebratory time, just something very mild-mannered, something very light, something that's not dangerous, those pills, all unlabeled, can be wrapped with fentanyl and can wind up in a terrible loss of life. No community is safe from this public health crisis. In my home state of Texas, fentanyl was linked to more than 1,600 fatal overdoses in 2021, while the CDC reports that there were more than 70,000 fentanyl-related deaths in the U.S. in that same year, including roughly 1,500 individuals under the age of 20. In 2022, more than 20,000 people died from fentanyl in Texas, killing more than 5 Texans aged 18 to 45 per day. Houston is standing up and asking for a stop sign for those who lose their lives to fentanyl. I want to again reiterate unintentional fentanyl use, given that 97% of the 870 unintentional synthetic opioid deaths in Texas in 2022 was fentanyl related, laced with fentanyl, unknown. And so the Fentanyl Now Stop Act is a necessary response. Let me just quickly, as I introduce my colleagues, say to you that we want to take a chunk out of the rise in fentanyl for lack of information, lack of ability to touch resources, small communities that don't have the finances to deal with the law enforcement arm that can stand up to fentanyl. So we begin by providing training and resources to ensure schools and teachers can administer opioid overdose reversal drugs or devices, saving lives. We stop the online sale of little pink pills and other brightly colored pills, which is the attractive element for children as young as preteen, that have been used to target and drive addiction among youth and have contributed to the recent surge in fentanyl-related overdoses and deaths, and they occur as well in schools and other athletic places or places where youngsters gather. Require HHS and DOJ to develop and implement a national strategy to educate the public about fentanyl, fentanyl-related synthetics, and fentanyl-laced substances. The synthetics are dangerous. Enhance penalties for offenses involving the distribution or manufacture of adulterated or misbranded drugs. Another key element that attracts younger people, doing so with the intent to defraud or mislead, to get those organizations that feed on the online sales, and as well as promotion or sale of unadulterated or misbranded drugs online. I can assure you, online is where our young people are getting hit the most, just for a little recreation. But these are laced with fentanyl, the most deadly. And as we have gone through any number of eras of drugs, from heroin to cocaine and crack, and opioids of all kinds through the issuance of pain prescription, most will say, scientists and medical professionals, that fentanyl is more deadly at its touch, at its taste, at its use. We must stop fentanyl now. Delighted to have Congresswoman Brown of Cleveland, Ohio, and thank her for her leading work in the areas of agriculture, drugs, and as well her work on the Oversight Committee.
Thank you. I couldn't reiterate or state it more plain as the other Jackson, the one non-Jackson on this press conference. The issue is a serious one, and it's one that has impacted my district, Ohio's 11th Congressional District, very much so. This has been an issue that has been under my radar since I served on local government, and our local government needs assistance from us to help battle this epidemic that has taken over our country. More than 200 lives are lost a day, and that is a tragedy. And this is something that we can help prevent. As an aunt of 6 with nieces and nephews who can be easily enticed by something like this, this is something that I want to see come to an end. We can prevent this, but we have to work together to put forth legislation that can help us stop this fentanyl crisis that we are dealing with. When I think about the legislation that we have put forth, as Representative Jackson Lee indicated, it is about saving lives. It is about educating our constituents, and it is about making sure our agencies like HHS and DOJ have the ability to implement strategies to advocate for the public awareness around fentanyl and fentanyl-related substances. In a city like Cleveland, where we are one of the largest, poorest big cities in the nation, the attraction for drugs as recreation is real, and it is impacted too many people in our community. So it is my honor and my privilege to stand with Representative Jackson Lee and Representative Jackson as a co-sponsor of the Stop Fentanyl Now Act. And with that, I yield back to the Honorable Jackson Lee.
Thank you, Congressman Brown, very much for your presence. Let me say that we have over 30 co-sponsors. Members are in a variety of their committees, but we knew that we could not wait one more day to introduce this bill. And so I want to express my appreciation for your presence here, and as well Jonathan Jackson on the Agriculture and Foreign Affairs Committee. And I know that in their deliberations, being a committee dealing with international alliances, even these issues are being discussed about fentanyl around the world and its entrance into the United States. Mr. Jackson.
Thank you very much, the Honorable Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee, and I'd like to thank my colleague and friend, the Honorable Chantel Brown of Cleveland. This is a national problem, and we are offering a national solution. I want to thank the Honorable Sheila Jackson Lee for, with her security, to be able to intertwine the HHS and the Department of Justice to pull them together. They do not have the resources at hand currently to stop this scourge of death. Last year, 67,000 children and Americans have died. We want to stop the breakup of our families. Families are being robbed. Children are being killed by the importation of these drugs. These drugs are coming through China. These drugs are coming through Mexico, and they're hitting our streets. They're hitting them hard. It started in rural America, went to suburban America. It's in urban America, and we're demanding that the federal government use all of its resources now to fight back. We want to save lives of American children. Children are dying needlessly. These manufacturers of this drug are now enticing children. They are lacing it. They have it looking like candy. Children are dying. Just this year, I had a very painful experience. My goddaughter was the victim. 3 children had tried these drugs. 2 woke up. 1 remained asleep. She was dead. This is impacting members of Congress. This is something that's on the forefront of so many members of Congress. As we leave here, go back to our respective districts, we are confronted with this daily. It's in Cleveland, Ohio. It's in Chicago. It's in Houston. It's in every major city. It's in every suburban community. It's in every rural community. It's in the family members of the members of Congress right now as we speak. So what are we asking to do? We are asking to use this legislation to give additional resources to HHS and DOJ to fill in the gap so that we can take the fight to the border, we can take it to the manufacturers, that we can save our children's lives and stop this needless death. Now, between the ages of 18 and 25, this is the leading cause of death for American children. And we know we have the will, we have the resources, and with this legislation, we'll have the tool to fight back. And at this point, I yield back to the Honorable Sheila Jackson Lee, and I thank her for her service, and I thank her for her creativity and her insight and her intelligence in bringing forth this solution to the problem. We don't want to fix the blame. We want to fix the problem. This is a tool that fixes the problem of these fentanyl deaths.
Let me thank you so very much for your astuteness, and this is a bill that I will march upstairs and introduce. It is the Jackson Lee Nadler, ranking member of the Judiciary bill, and let me offer his statement at this point. Ranking Member Nadler, former chair of the Judiciary Committee, we must address the deadly scourge of deaths caused by fentanyl, fentanyl-related substances, and fentanyl disguised as other drugs. Ranking Member Jackson Lee is leading this important fight with her comprehensive bill that responds in several thoughtful ways to address this public health crisis. I'm proud to co-sponsor the forward-thinking legislation. Look forward to continuing to work with Congresswomen and all the co-sponsors to tackle this important issue. Let me conclude my remarks by quickly, that aspect of the statement to say this. This is a counter to the bill that was on the floor weeks ago. We took our time to dig into what the actual actions were needed.
Thank you.
And the online crisis is every parent's nightmare. I can imagine, unfortunately, that the children around your godchild, couldn't have just picked these up online. And so we don't put in mandatory minimums. We enhance the penalties for online. That's where the pink pills are coming from. That's where the multicolor pills are coming from. And then I happen to be a member that visits her constituents in hospitals, some of them in dire condition. Some of them are wounded law enforcement officers. And you hear in the hallways, or you hear, not violating any privacy, that fentanyl is used in the treatment of extreme pain. In fact, I'm a member of the opioid caucus, or anti-opioid caucus. And we, of course, have been on that end of opioids when those painkillers were just rampant. And fentanyl sort of came in to make it even worse. So the scheduling scheme undermines the medical use. We understood that. But we're not going to be idle. We're going at this with a gusto, and it's important that this becomes law, absolute law, so that there is no wiggle room for HHS, Department of Justice, and our federal law enforcement to deal with the online threat. And I am excited by the presence of one of my colleagues who has had a history of prosecutorial duties and levels of assignments and expertise. He serves on the Judiciary Committee. He is a ranking member on the subcommittee on weaponization, and he is an effective thinker on these issues that are guiding us today. And I want to make sure that we welcome to the podium at this time Congressman Glenn Ivey, who, of course, has been dealing with this in a prosecutorial manner.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to join with Sheila Jackson Lee and other members of Congress, Congressman Jackson and others in the fight against fentanyl and related drugs. I think as a former federal prosecutor, and I was a state prosecutor too in Prince George's County next door, we've seen the war on drugs over the decades, and we've learned, I think, that we have to be more strategic in how we approach it. Throwing everybody in jail and leaving them there as long as possible hasn't been effective, so I think we have to take a more surgical approach to it, and I like the way this legislation moves forward. The other part of this that I like too is that it's not just limited to fentanyl, because we know that the cartels and other people who are manufacturing these drugs are trying to evolve them relatively quickly, in some instances making them even more powerful than fentanyl. And so I think we have to make sure we give the tools to the Department of Justice and law enforcement generally to make the adjustment and shift in their law enforcement and prosecutorial policies and approaches in a way that's still effective, that still gets to these criminals and still cuts off this level of trafficking. So it's an honor to be part of this team. I look forward to working to move this legislation forward and get the job done. And then after the legislation is passed, to making sure it's implemented and executed in the appropriate way. Thank you.
Thank you so very much. The key to what we're doing today, thank you, Congressman Ivey, Congressman Jackson, Congressman Brown, and thank you to my co-sponsors, and thank you to Ranking Member Nadler, the Congresswoman Ross, and Chairman Horford of the Congressional Black Caucus. We're very pleased with the array of members from across the nation who are supporting this and who have probably in the past had different views on how we address this issue of drugs. Again, I have indicated to you that I've been here long enough to have been through all kinds of iterations. Certainly, we've been in our communities. We knew when heroin was king. We knew when cocaine was king. We knew when crack was king. Then we knew when the opioid epidemic came. And that was based on the medical prognosis and painkillers that turned out to be the worst of the worst, we thought, until fentanyl has now taken siege. Certainly, its entrance comes from the southern border, but remind you that a great amount of it comes legally, carried in by United States citizens. We have been engaging in discussions with Mexico. It is killing everyone. But I started out by saying, I'm here to save lives. And when I hear parents bending over in pain for A students, outstanding athletes, pillars of the community, young people who are contributing to the community, and they don't understand what happened to their child. Good student, good child, loving sibling, loving daughter or son. And they find out that it's recreational friends in the schoolyard, pills online, and their child is dead. Hospital, himself or herself, because that has them engaged for the scourge of fentanyl. seeming lack of solution. We're not without some. I'll take yes, sir.
So you mentioned you have around 30 sponsors. I think that give any support from Republicans for this bill?
We're in conversation with them. We think this is a bill that can draw bipartisan support. We'll be working with the Judiciary Committee members. We've done these kinds of efforts in a bipartisan way. The Opioid Caucus is bipartisan. And what we wanted to do is to get this introduced so that members can be home discussing it. We think we can get to the floor on this legislation. The numbers are just too stark. And Mr. Jackson says something very, very redeeming or very, very real. It hits home. There are people on this floor, Republicans and Democrats, who either have had close friends or family members. We do eliminate harm. And so I would think that there would be no opposition to eliminating harm in the way that we're doing it. And we're also codifying some of the points that have been made by the Biden administration, but it will be put into law. We expect to get this bill to the United States Senate. Anyone else? Final words of thanks and appreciation. I do want to mention two other points for you to review, is that we insist that the Department of Justice establish an interagency task force to coordinate federal, state, and local efforts to combat the trafficking of these substances. So we want a fixture that can work across agency lines. There's nothing better when the federal government is working across agency lines, and we want it to not trickle down. We want it to flush the drugs down and flood down to our local law enforcement so that they can have the resources as well, because combating the trafficking is part of stopping the drugs getting into the hands of our young people. I'm excited about where we'll go with this, and I'm very grateful to my colleagues for having a commitment, and we're going to work. We're introducing it before the break, and we're going to be working during the break, our staff, to secure our co-sponsors and work with our friends on the other side of the aisle. I mean, how can you have any opposition to the fight against fentanyl? How can you be a Republican and don't see your way forward on a bill that is directing the federal government to stand up on this issue? I think we'll get both the support of the White House and as well the support of our friends on the other side of the aisle and in the other body. Any other questions? Thank you all so very much. You allowed us to come and not miss a vote. So thank you so very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Congresswoman Lee.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
That allows you guys. Thank you so very much.